Ayo, what is up, everybody? My name is Chandler Molyneux, and welcome into the Act First show where we help coaches get better at sales. All right, we're talking about the spouse objection today. I've been in the coaching space, selling online coaching in the fitness space and in the business space for a total of 10 years. And honestly, there's really only been a handful of ways that I've successfully handled the spouse objection. All right, now I'm sure there's a plethora of different ways to handle the spouse objection, but out of everything that I've tried, over 10 years of experience, I have 4 different ways that I've handled the spouse objection successfully, and I'm going to give you all 4 of those today. So I don't like to waste time. Let's go ahead and dive on in. All right, so the first one I'm going to go over with you is probably the one that has been most successful for me. Now, this one comes with a huge asterisk because everything leading up until this point, you have to have done it right. And a really great video for you guys to watch is the most recent one I did, so the one just before this. And then I would say like 6 or 7 videos back, I talked about how to do a proper discovery, and that would probably be another good one for you to watch, because in order for this one to work, everything in the call has to go right. And when I say everything in the call has to go right, what I'm talking about is you have to eliminate all concerns before they become objections. And the way that we do that is by having a really good discovery section in the closing call. So if all of that is done right, we've eliminated all concerns before they become objections, then you can properly handle the spouse objection in this way. All right. So at the end, they say, hey, you know what? I really just need to talk to my spouse. And you say, look, hey, I get it. I'm married as well. If you are, like, I like to show them my ring finger. I'm married as well. I'm not in the business of divorce here, but let's go ahead and do this. I do this all the time for individuals that want to speak to their spouse. Why don't you just turn the camera off? Why don't you just put me on mute? You can go give your husband a call, or if it's a wife, you can go give her or she a call, or you can go into the other room and have a conversation with them if they're home. Don't worry about me. I got plenty of things to keep me busy. I could do some admin work. You guys take as much time as you need. When you feel like you're ready, you come back on the Zoom. You turn the camera off, turn the mic back on, and we can have a conversation. If it's a no, no worries. We could chat through that. If it's a yes, then we'll get you onboarded right here. Does that sound good? They say yes, they go give them a phone call, or if they're in the other room, they go and have that conversation. You would be shocked how many people, 1, take you up on this, like, hey, I will go and have the conversation right now. And 2, how many of those people actually come back and say, you know what, let's go ahead and do this? Because a lot of times what the individual is looking for is they're a little bit unsure, they're a little bit fearful, and they're looking for validation from their spouse. It's not necessarily that they need to run it by their spouse. More times than not, the person could probably make the decision right then and there, but they just want validation that this is the right decision. Not only that this program is the right decision, but committing to this goal is the right decision, right? They want validation that they can accomplish this goal. And that's really what they're looking for. So knowing that, giving them the space to go have that conversation, get the validation they need, they come back, they say yes, boom, you close the deal. Now, obviously, it doesn't always go as planned, right? There's going to be times where individuals say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Or they'll just say, oh, he's in a meeting right now, or she's in a meeting right now, right? And they'll kind of, just say like, he's not available or she's not available. So I always like to have a little bit of a bullshit radar there. Now, I'd never say, hey, are you bullshitting me? But I will ask questions to see if they are bullshitting me. And here's what you do. You say, hey, that's totally fine. Look, we don't have to have the conversation right now. We could definitely have that conversation with them later on. But really quick, when you bring this to your spouse, what is the main concern that you're going to discuss with them? Is it the program, meaning you're unsure if this program can get you results? Is it you're unsure that you have time to be successful in the program? Is it maybe you have a little bit of fear, a little bit of doubt, a little bit of imposter syndrome if you can actually accomplish this goal? Or is it purely financial and you're unsure if you can afford the program? Which concern are you going to discuss with your spouse? Now, what is this going to do? This is going to flush out the concern that they are going to talk to their spouse about, and it allows you an opportunity to handle that objection or handle that concern right then and there. Because if you can, there is a chance, not a 100% chance, but there is a chance that if you properly handle it right then and there, that you close them without them actually needing to talk to their spouse. And you're not doing anything wrong here per se, right? It's not that you're like overstepping the boundaries of the marriage, because if they say, hey, I really need to talk to my spouse, at a certain point, you're going to go let them do that. And I'm actually going to talk about that here in just a second. But like I said, we have to understand the spouse objection. A lot of times the spouse objection is the person is not confident in making a decision. They want to confine, or they want to speak to the person that gives them that confidence, the person that they probably trust most in their life, which is their spouse, and they want to confine in that person, right? That's what the person's really looking to do. But if you are the person that leads them through their concern, there is a probability that they actually don't need to talk to their spouse and never actually needed to in the first place, and you close them right then and there. Okay, so that's the first one. All right, and that one requires you to be very good in the discovery section of eliminating concerns before they become objections. Go back, watch my videos if you need help on that. All right, now the second one, and I've kind of alluded to it, the second one is trusting them. And here's what I mean by this, and this is totally contrary to anything that you've been taught by other sales coaches, but I mean trusting them to get off the phone, have the conversation with the spouse, and actually setting a follow-up call. Now, if you made this your number one strategy, you're not going to make any money. I probably use this 10% of the time that I get this objection. All right, meaning like 1 in 10 people, I will have a gut instinct, a gut feeling about that they are actually being legitimately honest with me, and I will let them go and have that conversation with the spouse, and I will schedule in a follow-up call, and they will close. All right, because I gave them that trust, by the way. And that's the power of this. I'll talk you through how to do it in just a second. But the power of this is if you actually give them the trust to go and do the thing that they say they need to do, and they go and do it and they weren't bullshitting you, a lot of times they'll come back and say, because you honored my trust, we're moving forward. I believe in your program. I believe in what you have going on here. All right, so here's how that one looks. So basically, I'm handling the spouse objection. And if they tell me more than 3 times, so 3+ times that I really just need to talk to my spouse, like this is like something that we do, this is a part of the marriage, I really need to talk to them. They tell me that 3+ times, there are times in my gut that I'll just say, you know what? Yeah, I'll give you that opportunity. I believe in you. I'm married as well. I'm not in the business of divorce, and I want to give you that opportunity. So here's what we're going to do. Why don't we get a follow-up call on the calendar? How long do you feel like you need to make this decision with your significant other? Okay, cool. You need a day, 2 days? Great. Here's my next availability on that time, or on that day. I got blank and blank time. What's best for you? And then I lock them in right then and there. And then I invite the spouse. I say, if it makes you feel more comfortable, you could bring your spouse on the call. If not, and you'll totally fine, you have a decision by then great. We can have that conversation. Here's what you can expect on the follow-up call. Very important to fill them in on what they can expect. Obviously we're going to talk about your conversation. If it's a yes, we'll get you onboarded right on the call. If it's a no, no worries. We'll plan the time to reconvene in the future. Cool. So that's number 2. Actually trusting them. Don't do this as your main strategy. This should be like 10% of the time. All right, the third one is probably a more common way that you've seen the spouse objection get handled, but I'm going to add some different touches to it. So check this out. All right, so basically when they say, hey, I need to talk to my spouse, we're going to go into fact-finding mode, right? And the reason we're going to go into fact-finding mode is we're trying to snuff out the BS. This is the objection that is used the most in terms of bullshit, right? Like, because people know it's a very hard one to overcome, probably the hardest one to overcome, they will use the front. And the reason it's the hardest one to overcome is because the spouse isn't there, right? And if they need to talk to the spouse, right, there's a huge barrier there between you and that person. That's why I love the first one that I gave you so much, and not to go off on a side tangent on that, but I love the first one I gave you. But basically, we're going into fact-finding mode. We're trying to snuff out BS here, okay? So what we're going to do, they say, hey, I need to talk to my spouse, right? What we're going to say is we're going to say, hey, that's totally fine. I'm not in the business of divorce here. I'm married as well. Question for you though, talk me through their involvement in this process so far. Like, what are the kinds of conversations that you guys have had about this, right? And I leave it very general and I leave it very open-ended. And I leave it open-ended on purpose because I want to hear everything. I don't want it to be a yes or no answer. I don't want it to be a multiple choice answer. I want it to be, pour your heart out to me. I want every detail about what you and your husband or you and your wife have talked about up until this point about this process, okay? And that's important because we can use that information as leverage. So that's the first question I ask. Okay, if they say no, meaning what I mean by no is my husband has no involvement in this process, we always want to ask why. Because where my mind goes is if I say, talk to me about, let's just say it's a wife, talk to me about your husband's involvement in this process so far. Like, what kind of conversations have you guys had? Oh, we haven't had any conversations so far. My mind goes, is the reason that you haven't had any conversations because you actually don't really need to talk to them. You actually can just make this decision on your own. That's where my mind goes. Or they have a horrible marriage, right? Which obviously, nobody hopes for that. But if they say no, that there's been no involvement, I always ask why, because I'm thinking, probably because you don't actually need to ask them for permission. Okay, now the next question I'll ask is, have you talked to them about how this goal can positively impact your marriage or your family? All right, and the reason I'm asking this question specifically is because I want to link them accomplishing whatever their goal is for what your offer is to how it can improve their family status and their marriage, right? And think about it. Every single coaching offer can come back and positively impact their marriage and their family status, right? If it's a relationship coach offer, then obviously it can impact their marriage and family directly. But even if it's a business offer, that's going to positively impact their business. If it's a fitness or their marriage, if it's a fitness offer, that's positively going to impact their marriage and their family, right? And the list goes on and on and on. But the purpose of this question is to tie their goal to positively improving the marriage and family. So my second question would be, have you guys had any conversations about, how reaching this goal can positively impact your marriage and your family? Right? They might say, yes, we have had those conversations about me losing 100 pounds and how that could actually positively impact our marriage. Ding, 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 that's a positive. Or they'll say no. All right. Now, if they say no, once again, I'm operating under the assumption that if they haven't talked to their significant other about this, maybe they don't actually need to talk to them in the first place. So that may be true, that may not be true, but that's the belief that I always operate under, okay? So at this point in question 2, if they told me they haven't had that conversation, I actually am going to go for a close here, operating under the assumption that they don't need to talk to their spouse. So what I'll do is I'll tie the goal to how it impacts the marriage. So I'll say, okay, cool. Well, hey, no worries if you guys haven't had any conversations about it, but you do see like you losing 100 pounds, how that could positively impact your marriage. Is that right? They say yes. And I say, okay, cool. And I just want to check, like, you fully believe in the program? Great. You fully believe you have time to be successful in the program? Awesome. You believe in yourself, like there's no imposter syndrome, fear, or doubt, like you believe you can accomplish this? Awesome. And, all the payment plans that we discussed, how much it costs to invest into the program, like you believe you can afford that too? The reason I'm asking those 4 questions is I'm trying to see if there's any other concerns we haven't discussed before I go for the close here. Because if they say yes to any of those, I'm going to handle those. Okay. Now, assuming they say yes to all of those, I say, all right, and your spouse trusts your judgment, right? Once again, I'm operating under the assumption that the answer is yes here. So if they say yes, my spouse trusts my judgment, I'm going for the close. If they say no, my spouse doesn't trust my judgment, right? Then I know, okay, this person actually needs to talk to their spouse. And if that's the case, I'm going to pitch them to go and talk to their spouse, which I'll talk about in a second. All right, so let's operate under the assumption they say yes, though. So they say, yes, my spouse does trust my judgment. And then I'll say, cool. And 12 months from now, if you do lose these 100 pounds, your spouse isn't going to be mad at you, right? And I'm asking this rhetorical question because the answer is obviously no, my spouse won't be mad. What you're saying here is, in 12 months from now, if you accomplish this goal, your spouse is not going to get mad at you for that, right? Awesome, cool. Well, hey, if your spouse trusts your judgment, your spouse isn't going to get mad if you accomplish this goal in 12 months, you believe in the process here, then what are we waiting for? Let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's commit to this thing. What do you say? Are we committing to this? And I'll go for the commitment, okay? Now, let's assume that, they didn't say no to those questions, right? So they said, yes, I've had conversations about involvement. Yes, I've had conversations about how this goal can impact my marriage. I would then say, cool, have you guys also talked about the challenges that you're going through? Like, is your significant other aware of all the challenges that you're going through? They would say yes. And then I would say, cool, and talk me through, like, have you guys had discussions about mentorship and what that could look like for accomplishing this goal, right? And I'll gather more information there. All right, so I've gathered information on all 4 of those. Now, once again, not to get confusing here, but if they say, no, my husband is not involved, no, I have not talked about this goal with my husband, I'm operating under the assumption that they don't need to in the first place, I'm going for the close. But if they say yes to those questions, I'm going to ask those 2 additional questions, the challenges question and the mentorship question. Now, at this point, you really only have 2 options. So if you've gathered all that information, they say yes to all those questions, you've gathered all that information, you can either go for the close, because if they say yes, I've had conversations of involvement. Yes, I've had conversations about the goal. Yes, I've talked to them about the challenge. Yes, I've talked to them about investing in a mentor. Then what else do they actually need to talk to their spouse about? They don't. They've already had all the conversations. So I'll go for the close. I'll say, look, hey, I respect that you want to talk to your spouse, but it looks like you guys already have had extensive conversations. I'm assuming your spouse trusts your judgment. Is that right? Yes, my spouse does trust my judgment. Awesome. Well, hey, if you've already had these extensive conversations, they know what you want to accomplish. They know the struggles that you're going through. They know that you want to invest in mentorship and they trust your judgment. Then what are we waiting for? Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's make your spouse proud that you committed to yourself and let's get this done. Does that sound fair? And I'll go for the close. All right. Now, the other one, right? So I'm either going to go for it, or the other one is asking them to call them or to speak to them right then and there, right? So going back to the first way of handling this objection. So I would say, hey, look, totally respect that you want to talk to your spouse. I do this for individuals all the time. You can throw the camera off, turn me on mute, obviously stay on Zoom. Don't worry about me. I got stuff to keep myself busy. I got plenty of admin work. You guys take all the time that you guys need to have the discussion if you need to call him or if he's in the other room. When you guys feel like you've had that discussion, you can come back on and we can discuss your if you're going to move forward, then obviously we can onboard you there. If you're not, then we can have that discussion as well. Does that sound fair enough? Right, and pitching them to go have that conversation. So those are the 2 outcomes if you go down this path and go down that route. Now, this route, the one that I just went through for objection handling, is more complex, is more intense, but obviously you're getting a lot more information. I personally like the first one that I went through with you guys because it's much simpler, right? And it's much easier to remember the actual sequences. But if we role play it, then we shouldn't have any issues. Now, the 4th and final thing that I wanted to talk about in this video, and this one's extremely important as well, is, like I mentioned, this is the objection that is used most for bullshit, like a bullshit screen, like, oh, I just got to talk to my spouse, right? But really behind the curtain, they don't have to talk to their spouse. They just think it's too much money, or they think the program sucks, or they don't believe in themselves, right? And they're afraid to admit that, so they just throw the spouse out there, right? Now, here's one of the other ways that you can snuff that out and see if that's bullshit. If they bring up multiple concerns in the objection handling, it is not a spouse objection. So if they say, I need to talk to my spouse, but then they say, oh, I just need to think about it. Or, oh, it's just too much money, right? Oh, now's not the right time. They just start throwing all these different objections out, like multiple different objections. And it just seems like they're just coming up with a different excuse every single time. It's not a spouse objection. And what you want to do at that point is you want to say, hey, look, I understand, I'm a little confused. I'm hearing a lot of different concerns. You want to talk to your spouse. It's too much money. I just want to pinpoint, what is your main concern? Usually it comes down to 4 things. 1, the person doesn't believe in the program. 2, they don't think they have the time for the program, or it's not the right time. 3, they don't believe in themselves. There's a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of doubt if they can accomplish this goal. Or lastly, they feel like they can't afford it. Which of those 4 is it for you? And then I isolate the objection, and then I go down that specific path there. Cool, y'all. That is literally everything that I had. All right, like I said, I've been doing online coaching sales for 10 years, and these are the ways that I've handled the spouse objection with success. I've tried other ways with not as much success, but these are the 4 that have given me the most success. So if you guys enjoy this, you want more sales content, and you are a coach, highly recommend you subscribe to the channel, YouTube channel, or the podcast. Give a little thumbs up if you liked it as well, and maybe even leave a comment. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.